Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Kelp Kast. I am your host, Trenton, and I am joined by my good friend Emery.
Hello, everybody. What are we talking about today?
So, for our first episode, we're going to be talking about a nice, nifty little game called It Takes Two.
A nifty game indeed. And we are a little bit late to this because it was actually released back in March of 2021, which is actually very interesting considering the game itself. So, as we all know, March 2021, the world was still locked down for the most part, and hanging out with your friends wasn't necessarily a great option.
No.
And this game kind of brought that in its own spirit, kind of, because, the whole point of the game is to be split screen with your friend, but you don't have to be sitting next to each other. And so that game just brings that immersion that someone is in your seat next to you, playing with you.
Exactly. The big thing that this game does differently from many other split screen games is most other split screen games are locked into, you have to be at the same TV, actually split screen. But what this game does, and I don't know why more games don't do this, but it allows you to play that split screen where you see both the screens at the same time, except for you can just be online.
Right.
So you get a lot of the same immersion, except for you get to be online.
And it's very useful when you're being an idiot. You can be like, hey, turn to your right, because you can see what they're looking at. And so it is very useful too. And so we've only really seen this from one development team, and that's Hazel Studios. And the genius behind Hazel Studios is Joseph Fares. He was a Swedish film director. All right, he started his career making Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, which is similar to It Takes Two, but like a very concept idea, basically. And then the company he made that with, he ended up leaving, taking the core development team from it, and then creating Hazel Studios in 2014. Okay. In 2015, they started their first game, and then 3 years later, in 2018, they released A Way Out, which was, quote, the first co-op third-person action adventure. And the game was a huge success, and then they later started developing a second game based on its success using what they learned, and then we got It Takes Two.
It sold over 3 million copies and has almost perfect reviews. So at least everyone agrees with us that it's a great game.
Yeah.
So really, we don't need to be telling you it's a great game. You could have just looked it up, but right. It's such a great game that I think it deserves this recognition that it's gotten.
Right. I believe it has over 90% on almost all of the.
I think it has over 95. It's one of the best rated games I've ever seen. Yeah, like you said, this is like the only studio that's creating anything similar to this.
Right.
There's a couple others that are kind of close. Like, I don't remember the studio, but the Dark Pictures games are kind of close, but they're still not.
They're more of a movie than a game.
They're not really. You don't really get the gameplay part of it. One of the great things about It Takes Two is it's highly accessible, so anyone can play it. So that's why it has such great reviews, because anyone can like it. It focuses on the key aspect of what a game is supposed to be, which is just having a good time with a mate. And don't laugh at me like that. That's the whole point, Emery. The point is to just sit and have fun. Too many games focus on trying to make everything hyper competitive when there's not enough games that just promote having fun.
Right. We've seen some of our favorite games fall down that road of competitiveness, and it's just ruined the experience for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, it's hard to make a puzzle platformer competitive too, which helps a lot. But just because it's a puzzle platformer doesn't mean that it's just a puzzle platformer, okay? It includes aspects of many other games. It's got like many other genres of games, okay? So in certain parts, it'll have stealth missions where you have to not wake up holes, or there's a dropper map if you know, like, where you're falling and have to avoid stuff. There's a bunch of racing games. There's a freaking a classic fighting game sequence.
That was a lot of fun.
There's one of the levels where it's like a shooter, and I don't know if we're recording. And it's even got classic RPG stuff, so like Diablo and like World of Warcraft,
right? Like dungeon crawlers. There was a little bit of that in there. It was really cool because every level was unique from each other, and then it still had that puzzle aspect. It really combined the two genres they were trying really nicely at the time.
It constantly varies up what kind of gameplay you're doing, so it doesn't get old. Even if like you're not typically someone who likes doing puzzles, most of the time, or a good amount of the time, you don't even have to be doing puzzles.
Right. I'd say puzzles were maybe a half of it, maybe a little more, but.
And if you aren't for the puzzles, the other stuff pulling you along will definitely get you in the puzzles. Because a lot of the time, the puzzles don't really feel like puzzles.
No, none of them are that hard that you're sitting there for hours like Myst going, what does this even begin to mean?
Oh, God, Myst.
It's straightforward enough to keep the game going.
Yeah, so the way the puzzles work is for each level, each player gets their own unique ability. So in one level, the two main characters are Cody and May. By the way, we haven't mentioned this yet. In one level, Cody gets a gun that like shoots globs of syrup that can be exploded, and May has a rocket launcher to explode those.
Made from a pen.
Made
by a bunch of squirrels, believe it or not.
Yeah, crazy squirrels, I tell you. But they use these abilities that they give the characters very well, and to create many different types of puzzles throughout the level. So the whole level you're using the same abilities, but every puzzle you like kind of learn something new about the ability, even though you had access to the full ability the whole time.
Right.
But it constantly is changing the way you think about how your ability is used. And I think that's really smart because it prevents them from getting stale.
Right, and even level to level, having a unique utility, a new thing you have to use, discover, figure out the best way to use it. It really makes the puzzles fresh and not just like, oh, it's just another puzzle. Like, it feels different.
There's very few puzzles that feel similar.
Right.
Even though the fact that almost every puzzle will require both of you to work together. That's probably the biggest thing why they feel different, because there's maybe a handful of puzzles you can actually do by yourself as a player. Most of the other ones require the other player to be doing something to allow you to do whatever you need to do.
Right.
And so it's very cooperative.
Yeah, and I don't know how you felt, but there were moments in the story where we went on separate paths for a short amount of time, and I felt lost, to be completely honest, at some points, because I was like, I've had my teammate this whole time, and now he's gone. How do I progress further?
I'll be honest, man. I missed you during those times.
It was
a lot. It was
heartbreaking.
It was stressful, painful. I felt like losing my child that I don't have. It got to the heartstrings. But this game kind of wants that too, though, because despite the fact that it's so cooperative, it also kind of wants you to be feeling other emotions, you know? Like it has a lot of mini games, which you're going to talk about a bit later, that will kind of force you to go head to head, even if you don't necessarily want to, and you can skip the mini games. But it kind of adds to the experience. It gives you a break from having to constantly be cooperating. You can pick on each other a little bit too.
Right, and even throughout the levels a little bit, you can pick on each other. Smash them with a hammer, blow them up sometimes. But if it's a nice break. We played, I think, every minigame we stopped by at least twice before continuing, because it was just a nice break from like, oh, we're working together, to like, let's just blow some steam and, punch each other, whatever the minigame was. And they had 25 minigames throughout, and I believe we found all of them except for 6.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and it is important to mention that there were 25 minigames, but there were some similarities between them. I mean, they were all still fun and unique, but like there was quite a few racing ones, if I recall, or like ones where like you just press a button at a certain time, and if you don't, something happens, or whatever it was. But they were all unique and fun enough from each other. Like the racing mechanics, it wasn't like holding down a button and you go forward. There were different mechanics.
Yeah, every time it was different kind of controls and completely different environment, and like like not like one you're in a car maybe. The next one you're like riding a snail.
Right, the snail one was probably the most unique because you had to like charge up the snail and then it would just dash forward.
Yeah, I destroyed you in that one, dude.
That was awful for me. I just couldn't grasp that concept. But so there are similar games, but they're all unique enough from each other. And I don't know. There's a chess mini game. I don't know if that. I mean, it's chess. It's there.
It's literally just chess.
It's there. I don't really count it as a mini game, but.
Oh, come on, man. That's chess.
Maybe that's just because we're not chess players and we were just kind of like, yeah. Chess.
I still destroyed you.
Yeah, you beat me in like almost of the games.
To set the record straight, I beat Emery in pretty much every single mini game.
Right.
Because I'm just better.
In the footage you're seeing, I do a little bit better because I've played the games before, but
not much.
Not by much. Okay, so that's like the basic overview of the game. So let's talk about it. Like, we really enjoyed the game. Like, we would recommend this to anybody who just wants to relax with a friend and have a fun time. Now, it costs $40, but it's actually really nice because only one person has to buy the game. Whoever buys it, the other person just has to download what they call a friends pass, and it's the entire game, but you just can't play it if you're not invited to a session who owns the game.
The owner has to be the host. And
right.
I think like that's kind of why I picked it up, because I looked at it and I figured out that only one person had to buy it, and I was like, yo, this is awesome. Like,
right.
It made it way more inviting.
Right, because it's really only $20 a person when you break it down, and we got it on sale, so it was $15 a person. And for $40, you get around 10 to 15 hours. I mean, give or take a little bit in either direction, depending on how long you spend, how long it takes you to do the puzzles and all that. I believe we looked at our stats. It took us around 12 hours or so, I believe, and it was like 2 weeks or so we played it.
Yeah, even if the playtime might be a little bit lower than some games, the price of basically $20 per person for a game that has AAA graphics and mechanics is very unheard of nowadays.
Right, and it's such a unique game that I'd say it's worth more than $20 a person.
Oh, absolutely. They could easily charge $40 for each person.
Right, they could have charged $40 each, and I would still think it's worth it because it's so unique. No other development company has done anything like this.
I mean, that's pretty much what they did for their last game, A Way Out. It was $30 a person, and that game was worse, but it was still way worth the price.
Right, that game, yeah.
The game wasn't worse; it just wasn't as good. The other games still get.
Right,
but you're still paying the full price.
Right.
So they easily could have charged $40 a person.
They could have, because they did that with A Way Out, and I mean, it was a success. And then they took that and they made this, which is arguably phenomenally better, but they wouldn't have gotten there with A Way Out. And then they lowered the cost, which is it's fantastic.
Yeah, you almost think they would have done it the other way around, especially like the game's published by EA, so you think EA would be like, yeah, get all the money out of this you can.
Right, like they saw an opportunity. They could have charged a lot more for it and gotten away with it, really.
Somehow this is the one game that EA didn't cash out to all heck.
Yeah, it is kind of shocking, but it was a really fun game overall, and I think we both have nothing bad to say about it.
Yeah, literally as long as you have a friend, you should absolutely play this game.
Right. And there was 3 bugs we noticed, and they were all inside of the mini games. So, and it's a mini game. Who cares if there's slight bugs in there? It doesn't matter.
The bugs didn't ruin the games at all. It almost made them more funny because the games that happened on was like the super simple one. Like one of the most buggy mini games was just musical chairs, where it was literally just you press a button when the music stops, and somehow that managed to be the most buggy thing in the game.
It honestly was more fun with the bugs than I feel it would have been without it. But yeah,
because it made it like, what just happened? Why did I just win the points?
I mean, yeah, nothing bad to say about it. We highly recommend it to anyone who has a friend and you just want to relax, hang out, and have a good time. That's what it's all about.
But before we get stuck here for too long, we're going to be heading to our high spoiler part after this break. So if you plan on playing this game, which you should, just keep in mind if you keep watching, there will be some more spoilers, just going more in depth on the levels and talking more about the mechanics and stuff. So if you don't want to spoil that, I guess see you later. Thanks for tuning in. But if you're fine with getting a little bit of spoilers to maybe, if you're not quite sold yet, then stick around.
Yes, and we'll try to limit it as best we can, but to talk more in depth about it, it's gonna happen. All right. But yes, we will be back right after this message from our sponsors.
The year was 1922. I just put Wilbur down. It was a hard one. Wilbur was my favorite hog. Let me tell you about how I got Wilbur. Well, Wilbur, I got him from a market in the city in Omaha. I lived just outside Omaha. Such a cute little pig. They were gonna get rid of him, but I saw potential. You know, pigs is, the runts that litter. Like, a lot of them, they just want to get rid of them. But I see potential. Every pig has potential. It's not all in genetics. Sometimes it's in the feed. Sometimes it's in the leaf. So, Wilbur's such a nice pig. Hurts. I took Wilbur home, made him his little pen, put him with all the other hogs. He was a feisty one. When he'd wrestle nice. Wilbur was my favorite hog.
And we're back.
And
All right. So again, just before we start, there's going to be quite a few spoilers up ahead. So if you don't want to, you want to play it first or whatever, we advise you stop watching now.
I hope you enjoyed that ad break, by the way.
Yes. All right. Now that everyone's gone that shouldn't be here, let's start diving into the game a little more deeply. So basically, there is a story attached to all the puzzles, and it's kind of basic. I mean, basically, it's a couple. They're going through a divorce, and their daughter finds herself in the middle of it. And like in a trash can or at a rummage sale, I don't quite remember.
It was at her school.
At her school, yeah. In her library or something, she finds a book called The Book of Love, and it's written by Dr. Hakim. All right. And throughout the divorce, she like makes dolls of her parents in like the shed in the backyard, and then she'll go there when she's sad. And one day she goes there to cry, and her tears fall onto the dolls and brings the dolls to life. And it's weird. It like takes the souls of the couple going through a divorce and puts them in the doll.
Yeah, it ends up with both of the parents just like asleep in different parts of the house.
Lifeless. They're left lifeless, just like sleeping on the couch and stuff.
And it leads to some kind of funny cutscenes between the levels where she'll walk up to her mom and be like, "Mommy, do you have that headache again?"
Yeah.
And like she's not even there though.
Right. And then so they're transformed into this world where they are a doll. I believe one May is made out of wood and Cody is made out of clay.
Yeah.
And then Dr. Hakim, the Book of Love, also comes to life. And he's like, well, if you want to get back to your real body, you got to work through this, because that's like his job. It's the Book of Love.
Yeah, he's got to get them back together.
And so, yeah, it's a long story, but you start out in the backyard shed, and throughout the whole story, Dr. Hakim is just causing problems on purpose so that the couple can work it out with each other and re-find their love, I guess is kind of what it's going for.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's pretty gimmicky, like, you have to make time for each other, you got to communicate, and I mean,
it becomes a mini therapy session.
Right. It's all valid and useful for a relationship, but it's still pretty gimmicky at the end of the day. But all the characters they're funny. I mean,
yeah.
Dr. Hakim is a character to say none the least. He's always making jokes, dancing around weirdly. He's a crazy fool.
And at the start, I know both me and Emery are like, dude, get this guy out of here. He's so annoying. But once you start getting through the level and you start noticing that Cody and May are like starting to maybe like start having that connection again, like, oh, what are you doing, Dr. Hakeem?
Right. It is kind of genius how they do it, because in the beginning, as you're going through the levels, the characters will just kind of like interact with each other. They'll be like, May, what are you doing? May. Like in the beginning, they're making snarky comments at each other, like always boasting about each other, or blaming the other ones. And then throughout this that's like slowly diminishes, and then like you can tell that the love is like coming back into the relationship in a way.
Yeah, like on the first level, in the shed, they find their vacuum cleaner, and May's like, oh, why is the vacuum cleaner broken? And then Cody's like, I don't know, you were supposed to fix it. And then Dr. Hakeem kind of promotes him to fight like this to, show to get them to talk how they're actually feeling.
Right. Because then I believe he like empties the vacuum cleaner to find all this stuff that shouldn't go through a vacuum cleaner. And then May's like, Cody, why'd you put that in a vacuum cleaner? And the whole interaction is just pointing fingers, yelling at each other. And then you end up having to fight the vacuum cleaner. And
you get the most horrific scene, I think, in any video game.
The scariest scene of the game is in that first level when you kill him. I don't even know if it's worth telling you, because it is something to experience, to say none the less.
The first time I saw it, I was just like, what?
We were both like dead silent while it was happening.
I was dying laughing.
Oh, yeah, we were like laughing and then silent. It was very interesting. But yeah, throughout the story, you slowly go from a couple going through a divorce, always arguing, pointing fingers, blaming, to like they get to like a middle ground, I believe, around the snow levels.
Yeah, the snow levels when you can start to see their connection come back.
You can really see the connection come back. And then from there on, they're like more trying to work together, more like willingly working together. Because in the beginning, it's like, fine, do this. But then it's like, oh, yeah, let's do this together. Let's talk. They're complimenting each other. Like, you can really tell that it's coming alive again.
Yeah, and I think that's part of why the snow level is my favorite level, and I think it's yours too.
Yes.
Because it's the first level where you really see, like, oh, maybe these people did have a connection. You start to, like, you learn more about how they met and, like, how they got to know each other.
Right. That whole level is about
how they spent their time together.
Right.
And I think the level is about going back to where they got engaged, right?
Yeah. Yeah. One of the like memorable moments in the relationship at a ski resort. And it's depicted as a snow globe on a shelf in their house.
Yeah.
Which the game does that throughout the entire thing. Like every level, because you're a doll, you're tiny. So like everything you're doing is something inside of your house. Like you're inside a clock like hanging on the wall, or you're in a snow globe, or in a jukebox,
or your tree.
Or your tree filled with lunatic squirrels. There's
the tree with a whole world and a whole massive pond or
that
ocean.
Tree was huge. I mean, I don't know
how they fit so much stuff in the tree.
Yeah. It was nuts, and
nuts in the tree.
Nuts in the tree from the squirrels. And the bees. The squirrels and the bees.
The bees didn't have nuts.
No, the bees had a lot of honey though that we evidently blew up. But
spoilers in the spoilers section, Emery.
That is why we warned the general public. And going back to more of the snow globe level, because we'll talk about our favorite before we get to our less favorite level here. The environment that we were put in, you're like, oh, it's a snow globe. How great can it be? But then, like, as you go through the level, there's like a town inside the snow globe, and it comes to life.
The town was so cool.
It literally comes to life. You see snow people just like being made, and they're walking around, and they have really funky noses that bobble around, and there's piles of snowballs you can pick up and throw at the snowmen, and then they'll throw one right back, and you can just have a lot of fun with them. I mean, there's a whole bunch of there's like just tables of food that you can just be like nom 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 nom, just chow down on.
Heck yeah, man! Why don't I want to eat 500 pancakes?
Right, and there's like a frozen river pond park thing, and there's like a turtle, and it has like 4 nests, and like clearly there should be baby turtles there, and you can find them all around, and you can like bring them back to the mother, and then the mom's all happy and like, wah!
And if you really want to be a monster, they give you the opportunity to throw the turtles off the map, which is pretty fun too.
It is fun.
Sadly, they respawn.
Right, and like all of this relates nothing to the level or what you are trying to accomplish. It's just all added to add that immersion, add that next level of detail that sometimes is skipped out on in games.
Yeah, the game didn't need any of it.
Right,
like it's all there.
It wouldn't have changed gameplay at all if it wasn't there, but they added it anyway. Like, and it was just so cool to see because we spent probably close to an hour just like roaming around the town, seeing what we could discover. It was so much fun.
We spent a good hour in this part of the game that doesn't progress the game at all. Like you could just completely skip it and nothing would change.
Right, and I think that's probably what makes it one of our favorites. It just felt so much more alive and just gave us such a stronger emotion. And even the utility, it was, for background, we were given magnets for the level. And a magnet is a magnet.
Yeah.
It retracts and it attracts.
Yeah. Both Cody and May had the parts of a magnet. So they could use it to pull on things. So yeah, one was the positive side of the magnet and one was the negative side. And it's probably the most simple ability in the game, but yet it's one of the most well used because they just keep finding more and more ways to change how you'd expect to use it. Like it's just a magnet, right? So you'd expect to just pull stuff, but they add parts where you're able to like you shoot yourself up or you shoot a magnet gun to help the other player platform. And all like it has just so many little gimmicks with the magnets that I don't know whoever came up with it may have been on something because they just keep going with the level is so long, but every puzzle is constantly changing how you use a magnet.
Right, and to be frank here for a minute, my name isn't Frank, but to be frank with everyone here for a minute. When Dr. Hakim, he pulls out his magnet, I was skeptical. I was like, it's a magnet. I mean, how much can you really do with it? And to be honest, going into it, I wasn't looking forward to it. But then it blew my mind away, everything they did.
Yeah, they really just went off. And like near halfway through the level even, you go into this really nice and beautiful underwater frozen area with the magnets. And there's another part where you're using the magnets to pick up and move around a large like screwdriver to screw in screws to repair an underwater candy factory while you're being chased by an anglerfish. And it's all just so crazy. And yet you're still only using magnets.
It's like just hearing you say that, it's like a magnet did that? Like really? But it's just so like, who would have thought like, hey, let's put the magnets underwater, make him use a screwdriver thing to repair a candy. Like, what does that even begin to mean? Yet they just took it and ran with it.
It's the least ambitious sounding ability, especially because technically they both have the same ability.
Right.
But it still somehow manages to do the most.
Yeah.
And compared to their one we're going to talk about in a minute here, they had a cloning ability and a time control ability, and somehow that sounds like the most ambitious abilities you could probably have, because those are very hard to implement into a game,
right?
And that's probably why they implemented them not quite as well.
Like it's crazy to think they took something so simple, but they had an idea, a concept, and they ran with it, and it goes to show that you don't need complicated things to make something unique and cool and provide a warm emotion to people. Like if it's simple and you have like passion, I guess, really with that idea, run with it. And that's what they did. And it was by far the best level.
Yeah, overall, to recap anything we may have missed or already said, the level itself, the most stunning in the game.
Beautiful.
The puzzle, the puzzle designs with the magnets, just amazing. They somehow managed to just constantly come up with new stuff that's even more and more interesting each time. As well as there's also like skiing race parts that come up, which just emphasize the atmosphere and the atmosphere of the level and Cody and May's relationship. And the whole level just feels very warm. It's such a fun level.
It was by far one of the better levels. Or
it was probably the best in the game.
Yeah. Personally, it was our favorite, and we probably enjoyed it the most and by far spent the most time on it.
Yeah. Now, the level we think that probably has the least interesting puzzles is probably the cloning and the time travel one. Now, that's not this level is still very fun. Every level in the whole game is very fun.
Right.
But just the cloning ability that May has and the time travel that Cody has, it's just too ambitious for its own good.
I think almost, like when you hear Dr. Akeem be like, oh, you're going to clone yourself, you're going to control time, like just ideas start popping in your head and you're like, oh my God, there's so much potential here. And it's not used to its full potential, I feel almost.
No, so yeah, it ends up boiling down to May's cloning essentially working as a teleport so she can go somewhere, leave her clone preemptively, and then walk away and then activate it whenever she wants and go to wherever she left it. And Cody's time control ability essentially just means with certain objects on the map, he can move up and down a scroll wheel essentially to just like switch the position of the object. Right. And pretty much every puzzle is May leaves a clone somewhere, walks away. Cody moves the object. May teleports there. Cody moves the object back. And then that's pretty much the puzzle.
Yeah.
And that ends up being a very, very similar formula for all the puzzles on this stage. And it gets changed up, but not enough to feel different. Like each time it still feels like you're following the same rhythm or the same steps.
Right. It's almost like it's like a instructions manual of like, go here, move the clock, teleport there. And it's very systematic almost, right? It's the same steps, just with a different object, essentially.
Yeah, there's no way to really get stumped on them.
Right.
Because they're pretty self-explanatory. But the level itself, it had some of the coolest side gimmicks still, even for being one of our least favorite. It had some of the coolest side gimmicks. It had the Tower of Hell, which I know Emery loved a lot. It's pretty fun.
Well, that was after the clock, shortly after the clock.
It was during it was like in the middle of it.
Yeah.
This level also kind of had an open area.
Yeah, you were like inside a clock, but it like moved kind of weirdly to like a weird clock village of sorts.
Yeah, this village wasn't alive, but it still looked pretty cool.
Yeah.
And the ending of the level is one of the most like action movie things probably ever.
Huge explosions.
Massive explosions.
And I mean, the boss fight was pretty cool. I mean, again, it was just using that simple concept where you're like, oh, you're moving through an exploding clock. So yeah, it's fun. It's cool.
Yeah, everything about the level is still very fun. Just the puzzles feel overall way more simple than most like any of the other levels. But once again, this game, just to clarify, this level is still awesome. It's just the puzzles weren't quite all there.
Right. Like it would be unjust to say the level is awful and we hated it. We still enjoyed our time in the level, and it was still a lot of fun.
This level had the fishing minigame too.
It did have the
right
fishing
next to the Hell Tower.
And the Hell Tower, I gave up on that and went back to fishing.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest. I gave up.
You were a big quitter that day.
I did. It made me mad.
It's not too hard. I think you're just a baby.
Hey man.
But so some of the other levels. Let's see. We got the the second level, the tree level, right? This was overall, in general, probably the least exciting level.
Right. And again, we still enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It was still fun, but like obviously there's gonna be ones you enjoy more and ones you enjoy less. And this just happens to fall to the bottom of the tree, I guess.
Oh,
you get it?
Wow.
We're on a tree.
Wow. That was not appropriate, Emery. But yeah, so on this level, I think we said this near the start, but I'll repeat because it's been a couple minutes. Cody has a sap launcher that shoots like explosive sap, and May has a rocket launcher that can detonate the sap.
Engineered by squirrels, might we add?
Yes, these squirrels are absolutely nuts.
They are nuts, and I mean, yeah, pun intended, but they're nuts. There's nothing more to say. Basically, the squirrels, they like kidnap you from the tree because you're using the tree to get from the shed to the house, essentially.
Yeah,
and like you like find a door in the tree, and you think it's a great idea to like knock on it. And then some squirrels just like kidnap you.
Yeah, and they think you're spies for the wasps.
For the wasps that have taken over the tree. It was once the squirrels, but they were pushed back by the wasps, and they kidnap you. And they're like, "We won't kill you if you clear out the wasps or whatever."
Yeah,
and yeah. So then, go ahead.
Okay, so overall, the level uses its puzzles well, but over time, I think the rocket launcher and they almost feel a little bit too simple.
Yeah,
in the same way, they're constantly changing up how the puzzles are done, but it almost gets. I think this felt like the longest level in the game, and I don't know if it deserved the runtime as much as some of the other levels.
Right. And I don't know if they kept it simpler because it's the second level. You're still learning the game mechanics, or
that's fair.
If it was just kind of like, I don't know. It did feel like after a while, it didn't get boring, but it just fell dull in a way.
And compared to a lot of the other levels, a lot of the scenery is a lot darker and more, a lot more browns. For a lot of it, you're in a cave.
Right. It's very gloomy, and it's not bright, colorful, warm that the other levels are.
Yeah, and overall, the level is still fun. It's just it had a little bit more runtime than it should have. So this is probably the level we down on the most. But yeah. I mean, it's the second level in the game. It's probably forced to be a little bit more simple because you're still learning it. But the main place I can really give this level props is probably with the most unexpected genre crossover of the entire game, of you getting in a Mortal Kombat style fight with a squirrel on a hang glider.
Right. So the build up to this is basically you like defeat the wasp or whatever, and you go back, and the squirrels, they're nuts, as we've stated, and they turn on you, and they open fire, just like trying. I don't know how we didn't die. There was like 6 weirdly built machine guns just spraying us down, and we hop on a makeshift hang glider airplane
made out of Cody's underwear.
Right, made out of his underpants. And then you like fly through the tree, dodging stuff, fighting other airplanes. And then you end up in a squirrel fight. Cody is piloting, and May ends up fighting the squirrel. And
it's just one of the most random things ever. And you're just like, what? Just like, why is this happening? Right. But it's a very fun part, and that part really exemplifies what makes the game unique with a lot of its genre crossing.
Right, like it was completely random, but so unique and so cool. It was awesome.
The game's not scared to try out things just randomly to just see like if they can be fun.
Almost like purposely random.
Yeah, they're intentionally random. The whole game is intentionally bizarre.
It's perfect. And all right, so I know we talked a lot of bad about that level, but we did still enjoy it, and we're going to end on a bit of a higher note. We're going to talk about one of our other favoriter levels, a pretty crazy level to say nonetheless.
Yeah.
So basically, Cody and May, it's kind of halfway through the story, just before the snow level, I believe.
Yeah.
You come up with an idea that if you make your daughter cry on you, you will like, because remember, they were turned into dolls by her tears. So they think like if you do the reverse, it'll put them back in their body. So they try to find a way to make their daughter cry, which sounds really bad. And they're like happy about it.
It is bad.
They're happy about it, which is a little concerning, but I guess given the circumstances, we'll let it slide. But you like make your way through this railroad track, you like do some funky stuff along the way to get to the castle. But then once you reach the castle, it's kind of like that snow level feel where there's just like a cardboard village before the actual castle. You know, like I remember the first thing I remember seeing is the guy stuck in glue, and you're like yanking him out, and he just flies into another pile of glue. And it's just stuff like that. There's like cannons that shoot you onto a dartboard. There's a train, I believe, and there's like, I believe you were messing around with like an art canvas for a while.
Yeah, it's very similar to the City of the Snow area.
Like that. And then, you know, you get to the castle and you meet...
By the way, the castle is it's something that Cody made with his daughter. So it's like in his daughter's bedroom. It's like this cardboard castle that he made for fun with her, just for the context of that.
And before you get to the queen, I think it's before you get to the village, actually, you do this really cool dungeon crawler genre where, like, it's just really cool. It's another great example of how they just incorporated a different game style into a puzzle game, and they like changed it and they made it work, and it was a lot of fun to get there.
Yeah, it was awesome because dungeon crawlers are one of my favorite types of games. So I was like, heck yeah, this is awesome. I get to play one of my favorite types of games just randomly right now. And I know Emery hasn't played them as much, so he got to like experience it with me and like kind of get introduced to it more. Maybe. It
was fun, and honestly, it has opened my eyes to those types of games. Which, if that's what they were going for, it was perfect. But anyway, back to the castle. So you get through and you meet the queen, which is an elephant. Okay,
yeah, stuffed elephant,
like a stuffed toy elephant from the daughter's like early childhood, and I believe Cody's the one that slips up and like tells in front of the queen, like, we are here to kill you to make our daughter cry. And, you know, the queen's like, what? But I'm happy. Can't we just like jump rope and be happy friends together?
That proves it's all Cody's fault. He ruined the plan.
And so, yeah, then like the elephant runs away into like an escape shuttle that was built. And then
May comes in with the most clutch like throw. She like throws something at the rocket ship and knocks it down and it crashes
into a claw machine. Type thing. So then you spend some time like trying to hook it with the claw, which for some reason took us longer than it should have.
That took us longer than Hell Tower for some reason.
It was. I think we were just doing it wrong. I don't think it was that complicated that we made it seem. But then you catch it and she gets caught in like, you know, the flappy door. And so you like pull her out of it and you end up ripping her leg off and like stuffing goes flying. And she starts, you know, she's crying. Like, she's like, I just want to be friends. And you start dragging her to the cliffside to throw her off the shelf.
And at this point, the background music is just like super sad. And
it's so like, while you're doing this, you're like dragging an elephant to its death, and at one point somehow its ear gets ripped off too. And it's honestly terrifying. Like the vacuum death and this was like terrifying in this game. Like you're dragging an elephant to its death, a queen, might I add.
Yeah, does a better job of making you feel scared than most horror movies.
Honestly, like it was so many emotions. You're like, what is happening? You're laughing and then you're like almost in tears. It was such a roller coaster. Like that whole part of the game was very cool. And I think, I don't know, everything is my favorite with this game. But
except for the tree level.
Well,
that's my second. Everything's my favorite and the tree level is my second favorite.
Fair enough. It's my second favorite. But yeah, like that just like the game did so many things. It was just so fun and unique. And I mean, it is something that hasn't been done before, but it was executed perfectly.
Yeah, it's the only thing of its sort, and most games, despite it being unique, it's unique in the fact that the way it's played, but it's also unique in the fact that it's so willing to experiment with different things and try new things and just kind of be more out there. And a lot of games seem too scared to do that too.
Right, and I'm very disappointed that. Well, I mean, it is still early, but I really hope to see other developers see the success of this game and use it to create something of their own. Because they're the only one that's done something like this, and I believe they are working on a third game, and I can't wait for it, but I hope other minds, other developers see this opportunity and just run with it, because I think it could add a lot to the community.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know how it hasn't happened already from A Way Out, because that came out quite a while ago, and no one seemed to catch on to that, and that was an amazing success too. For like the first game the studio is publishing.
Right, for a first publish and something so out there, it did phenomenal, and then they took it and made a second one even better,
even more out there, and
right, and it was a bigger success. Like, they took a risk and it played out. They clearly spent their time, and they made it perfect from the music to the artwork to the gameplay. It was, honestly, no stone left unturned. Other than the minigame bugs. But what are you going to do about it? You can leave one stone unturned, and I'm glad it was that one.
Yeah. I mean, you're not necessarily supposed to find all of them anyways, unless you're really trying to.
Right.
Because you find them as you flow through the game, and if you accidentally miss a couple, then, oh well. But, yeah, I mean, the game has just so much going for it. It's honestly... We're so blessed that it even exists.
Right. Nothing bad to say about it. And again, highly recommend you check it out if you are interested in something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think there's much else to say.
There's more we can talk about, but we have to leave some of it for you to find out for yourself and explore more.
I think we've spoiled enough here. But
all right.
Thank you so much for joining us in the first episode ever of Kelp Kast.
All right, and thank you again to our amazing sponsors. We couldn't be here without you, and to you, the viewers. I mean, honestly, just thank you for listening the whole time. I hope you had a blast, and I hope we opened your eyes to something potentially amazing for you.
And Mr. T and Miss Sims, if you're here, thank you for watching all the way to end. It really means a lot.
Yes, and we encourage you to play the game together.
Yeah, you guys should play the game together. That'd be awesome.
All right. Have a great day,
Bye.
everybody.